back again. We had a little false start, and I was analyzing the wrong game from a yesterday game. So I was glad to see that Joseph Zeltsin played a more interesting and important opening as opposed to what we thought he had played. So let's take a look at board one. And already we have, like I said, I talked about the Cinderella story of our normal master, Daniel Johnston, one of the last people in the club wearing a paper COVID mask for all his games. In fact, when I interviewed him for the first time, that was the first time I'd seen his face. I've been in a lot of tournaments with him, but hey, whatever he's doing is working. So let's take a look and go back in this game to the beginning. And here we go. E4, his opponent plays G6. And hold on, do you have something you need to do? Okay, time out again. It was working fine, but oh, look, wow, I'm still sitting there. All right, cool. Do you want to stop streaming again and finish what you got to do? Looks pretty good to me.
Alright. I think you were not scrolling all the way up, so you should be fine.
Oh.
Whenever you finish the game, just scroll all the way up.
So here we are, and we'll keep going. The modern defense. God, I haven't played that in so long, but his opponent, Mirkola Bortnik, likes to play 1G6. It's considered an inferior opening, but because it doesn't control the center. So white usually gets a slight advantage in any variation. However, it's very unbalanced. So that's what black is counting on probably using his experience to trick his master opponent and giving his opponent a free space advantage. So take a look. Knight C3, D6, taking up a little ground, but not really staking out claim in the center. Bishop E3, and standard move, just getting your pieces out to normal squares. A4, stopping the move B5, which could be coming to go after his knight. Knight F6, H3, A5, stopping more space gain. White's saying, all right, if you're going to let me, I'll stop you from moving your pieces to active squares. So let's see what happens. Black, oh, we're here, okay. Look, we haven't gone very far in the game, so that's very interesting. So now let's see what's going on here. Let's look at board two, where Joseph Zeltsin, whose games I've been the most impressed by in this tournament, and we'll go, his game yesterday to defeat Kamrakulov was absolutely breathtaking in its beauty, featuring a double pawn sacrifice. Well, after winning a pawn, first Kamrakulov sacrificed a pawn, and then Zeltsin sacrificed one back and a second one to clear the squares for his bishops and ended the game with a beautiful attack. So let's see what's going on in his game. We're going to the beginning of it. Zeltsin sits down and plays D4, showing that he's able to play both E4 and D4. He chooses D4, and we have, again, on board two, a modern defense. Very funny. I mean, so the top players in the tournament are playing basically slightly inferior openings to get out of book. So let's see what happens. Now this is called the Gurganidze, where he combined the Caro-Can defense with the modern defense. And here we go, H3, okay, D5. Now you can play Knight F3 here or E5. He chose to go after space and not let a pawn take pawn. And that takes away the knight's best square on f6, so he prepares to bring his knight to h6 with h5. Knight f3, bishop f5, very solid. Bishop f4, can't go wrong. Knight d7, getting the pieces out. Queen d2. Knight h6, and now we see. It stops the pawn roller g4, which white may consider, but not yet, and just stakes out all his pieces to pleasant squares. So bishop e2. See, now we're seeing the players getting all their pieces out before commencing any active operations. b5. So let's see how he reacts to this. a4. Instead of stopping the pawn in its tracks, he attacks it, sees what happens. b4, and the knight simply comes back. He's fully prepared to say, come towards me with your pawns, you're only leaving weaknesses behind them. So a5. Now notice how the e2 bishop has a lot of squares on that diagonal. I can't really use them for anything, but let's see what happens. Knight e3. Now it's questionable whether that knight will want to take the bishop, because then the knight would recapture and be so well placed. But definitely, attaining the two bishops might be worth it. So let's see what happens here. Knight b6, and the computer gives it a question mark. But it's hard to see, really what black's going to do besides that. If he castles kingside, he might run into a g4 break to crack open the h-file on his king. With the rook is very useful over there on h8 right now. So often in the Gurgenidze, the king sometimes looks its way to f8, and after a trade of pieces even brings its king out to g7, though right now black's position is sort of jumbled with his pieces. He can't get away with it. But a solid idea in this Gurgenidze, named after a Georgian master, famous Georgian master, Gurgenidze. I like saying that name. It sounds like Gorgonzola, right? A cheese. Forgive me, Georgian. So basically, black keeps his king in the center for a while in this, to be able to use that h-file possibly, okay? So here we go. Knight b6. Well, he's got to decide what to do, and he looks at the c4 square. And let's see what happens. So far we have no move yet, but the computer looks at castles kingside, but I think white wants to keep his king in the center too. So he's going to think for a little here. I mean, this is a decisive game, and players are more cautious. They really want to make sure they don't blow this, because they have the tournament in their hand right now. And this round is crucial. If you win one of these games, then it sets up a possibility where you can even take a draw in the final round, if you want one. So let's go back to the master board and see what's going on board 3, where we have people not quite at the top, but just a half point behind. And one of them is Grandmaster Hashid Raja, who gave us a beautiful lecture of his masterful Nidor Sicilian yesterday morning. And let's see how his game progressed. He's black in this game against our former really young prodigy, Liam Putnam. So the local player plays e4. By the way, I asked Raja where he was from, and right now he's from Missouri, where a lot of strong tournaments are. So let's see, he plays c5, the most combative defense, and this I love to see. Knight f3, d6. Can't get real wrong with that move. d4, and this is our young player is willing to play. Now this is called the semi-open game. This isn't quite an open game, because black didn't play e5 and take. He played c5, meaning black has a slight positional advantage of 2 center pawns to 1. And endgames will probably favor him. Though white, though, has quick development, a beautiful knight in the center, and his bishops can come out very quickly. As I said yesterday, shorter games usually are won by white in Sicilians, longer games often by black. Let's see what happens. Knight f6 attacks the pawn on e4. This is almost always played. Why? If you dither around and play a move like knight c6, anyone know what white should play here to capitalize on the fact that black didn't play knight f6? This is why black always plays knight f6 in these positions. Like a robot. This move, bam, the Maroczy bind. And that's what is essential that almost all black players stop. So let's go back, and that's why we see this move, knight f6, because it doesn't allow c4, and the most sensible move is knight c3. And now there's no more Maroczy bind, and that pawn on c4 would really cramp black's position and can lead to a lot of great wins throughout chess history with a space advantage. And that's okay, so we're not getting that. And here is Raja's favorite opening, Bobby Fischer's favorite opening, and Garry Kasparov's favorite opening, in which he was almost invincible. The Najdorf Sicilian. Now, if you look back at Paul Morphy and your early school about bringing your pieces out quickly, doesn't really solve those problems. And that's why one of the reasons the Najdorf is not played as often by non-professionals is because any move for white, almost any move, is a good move here. And black has to be ready for any move. G4 is a good move. Rook G1 is a good move. H3 is a good move. I mean, that's why I, being a semi-professional chess player, shy away from Najdorf sometimes, just because they're so complicated now and there's so much theory. So anyway, it's still one of the greatest openings. So Raja is a grandmaster and he's ready for anything here. Now, weird. Liam Putnam decides to take his very knowledgeable opponent maybe out of book. Almost never is this played. You're voluntarily spending a tempo on retreating a piece. Usually what's done here is a move like bishop e3. Very popular in the old days when I had a lot of victories with f4. But now I look at it and I don't really like it because it opens my king up. Another very popular move is bishop c4. And probably the most cutting edge move was played bishop g5, I think yesterday, where Raja won a beautiful game. That's the most complicated. But Liam just says, I'm just going to back up and see what you do. And that's pretty bold of him. And here is where Raja plays knight c6. Almost never is the knight put there. The knight usually comes to d7. But here he says, all right, you're doing that. I mean, I can do this. If white is spending an extra tempo on retreating a piece, it gives black a chance to develop. And so black thinks he's feeling comfortable. And now here we are, and we'll have to check another board. So let's go now to board. Any new developments on board 2? They just still have the last move being knight e3 and black to move. Wait, white to move, sorry. So the last move was knight b6. And we have, Joseph is thinking he's got more time. Okay, very interesting, we'll go back. And on board 1, we have some more movements in this. The reason I'm checking these top boards is, of course, they're super important. So we'll get to the lower boards soon. Here we go. I mean, obviously someone on board 3 or 4 could end up being the champion too, or even 5, if these last rounds someone goes on a tear and the top boards draw. Okay, here we go. We looked at this. Knight a6, okay. And knight b4, which is a common idea. Now, what's he doing? Why is he, well, you know, looks to me a little bold of white to castle queenside. In fact, I'm a little surprised because go back. To castle queenside here, where you already pushed one of your pawns, sheltering your king, is a little bold. I still think more normal. I don't think, this seems a little schizophrenic, if you will, of white to be castling on the queen side here. I'm only saying that as I used to play the modern defense and Perk defense in Budapest in a lot of international. I beat Nakamura, big win, like in an international tournament, and I'll always have that, which is sweet, back in 2000. But I was a specialist in this. Now I don't quite believe in the Perk modern defense because it gives white the share of the center. But here's the thing, if I'm black here, I'm liking seeing white castle queenside. And sure enough, the computer gives it a question mark. So I'm a little concerned about Daniel Johnson. I mean, he's playing so classically well. And look at this, the h3 pawn right there. You could castle under that and you're really solid. But what is he thinking? Here, that means he's going to try for h4, right? Or g4 and attack on the king side now. But he's already played h3, which is, now he's losing a move if he'd have to play h4. So to me, this is a bold move, and if Johnson, I'm a little definitely concerned. I'm liking black now because now let's see, what can this knight do? If, it's sitting there, there's no way to kick it away. And you could play for the move d5, not yet. You could even play for a move bishop e6 here. But I think, I still think, the computer still thinks white is fine. So let's say white is not in danger yet. I mean, there's no way to crack it open. Doesn't look like b5 works. So I may be, over aggressive on this look. I'm thinking humanly looking, it looks like a perk player might like to see that king over there on the queen side where he's already got a pawn advanced. So, it's a long way to go. And Johnson has proven himself to be just a resourceful player in so many positions. So let's go back now and see how we are on board 2. Meanwhile, of course, Zeltsin is still thinking, which I understand. It's a very complicated position. Should he castle? Should he not? And now we have some music in the club. Interesting. I'm hearing some music. Maybe that's upstairs. Okay, what do we have here? Let's take a look finally at board 4, where we have Eugene Yu with 3 points against Alex Katz, an international master who's been creeping back up from a rather not too high score. And now let's see what we have here. As looking at the board, I see a queenside space advantage for black, but I also see doubled pawns. So let's see what's going on here. Or do I see an extra pawn? I see an extra pawn. Okay. So let's go back. Here we have d4, knight f6, knight f3, e6, g3, d5, bishop g2, b5. This is a very clever way to not go into a normal Catalan. Now, most guys would play bishop e7 here like a robot, which allows c4. And now we're in a Catalan, which is a standard opening to try to crack open that diagonal for his bishop on g2, right? But look, black says if you're going to play this sort of wimpy move order of not playing c4 earlier, I capitalize on it by playing b5. And you know what? I've played this move order with white, and I'm like thinking, I better think a little more carefully in the future about my move orders. Because if any of you know, move orders are what grandmasters use to trick lower-rated opponents. They vary their order of moves, and they go, I want this. Does he know what I'm angling for? I'll pretend I'm playing this and switch to that opening. And so, let's see what's going on here. Do we have any, all right, streaming chess, great, here we are. We have no comments. Feel free to stream a comment, any of you out there. All right, so now white has got to play some other way because maybe he'll play a4, chip away at this pawn. I'm not sure what oh look, computer recommends a4. Let's see what he happened. He just castled. Bishop b7. a4 is finally played. b4 made sense. Why crack open the game? Don't give up your center control, you see? Like, if b takes a, maybe c4 then. And then queen takes a4. You see, look at that pawn. So you don't want to distract. Instead, you play, see, and maybe c3 will be played, chipping away at that advanced pawn. Oh, he played c4. So this is a chance for black to capture en passant, or as often American players say, en passant. But we like to try to use our French pronunciation correctly. But as I said, it's more important to understand the moves than to know how to pronounce the names of these moves. But it's good to pronounce them correctly, all things being equal. So here we go, knight d2, and now he's going after this extra pawn, and now he's sort of gotten himself in a Catalan, but who is victorious here? Who got the most out of this new position? It looks to me like white still has sort of coaxed black pawns to advance too far, leaving weaknesses in their way. And he still retains 2 center pawns to 1. This pawn's going to go, but he could sacrifice it by playing c3 to retain it for now. He didn't. I'm wondering if c3 is a move. In fact, the computer recommends black play c3 and not lose this pawn. But he decides to defend it with his bishop. Then again, he's moving his piece again, which he already moved once. And why not? White could play queen c2 and then b3? I'm wondering what the idea is here. Computer likes queen c2. I was just recommending that, right? Plays rook e1. What was the idea? Let's see if queen c2, I was just going to take that pawn, right? And this is what I was afraid of, b3, right? But what's the big deal? Queen c3. What was he afraid of? Is he afraid of knight c6? The knight is going to take on c4 now. So your queen looks a little uncomfortable with white, but you're going to take that pawn on c4. And the computer likes white. This, to me, would have been the most logical move, queen c2. But he chose rook e1. Now, again, look, I'm 2,200. These guys are 2,500, you know. But we can't just worship rating. Everyone can make mistakes. So let's see what goes on here. So now, again, black played knight e4. And now, let me just go back a second. So yeah, queen c2 to me makes the most sense. He goes here, and now they give c3, and they have the game very close. Black should give up the pawn with c3 because it's still extra. But he goes knight e4, and it's still close. You know what? You look at this, and this f2 square is a little weaker. And, you know, it's just definitely an odd position. And maybe, I think black was angling for this odd position. Because, let's face it, Alexander Katz has 300 points on his opponent, and he's black. So basically, he took him out of a mainline Catalan. And that he's probably accomplished his mission. So I don't know what's going to happen here, but let's see. So let's go back here. Now let's see what's going on. Sure enough, here we go. Remember I said we got an offbeat Sicilian where white retreated a piece, knight b3, without being kicked by the e5 move? All right, let's see what happens. Knight attacks bishop. He sees where you're going. See, the whole idea is, what's he going to do with this bishop? If he goes g5, we get chase. If he goes h4, we chase. If he comes back, we play bishop b7. And a very strong position has arisen. Possible knight outpost here. Sure, h4 could be played to try to undermine the king side. But it's a close game. So this is often an idea. He plays this. He goes to e1. And now black often goes back to f6 with his knight. And white repeats the position by moving his bishop to e3. You see, this is what often happens in some GM games. And white says he's prepared to take a draw. Maybe. Right? Now, it's a little early to take a draw, right? But still, white could say, I'll take one. But I doubt black wants one because he's the grandmaster here. Okay? So he may go back. Okay, let's go back. Yep, here we are. And black will decide whether he's just going to go back and test white to see if he's going to play bishop e3 again. And if he does it quickly, he gained a minute on his clock. 2 moves. So it's nice. You get more thinking time if you repeat the position just once. But who's it going to benefit? The person that moves quicker, and black hasn't moved it back right away. So let's see. Let's go to a game we haven't seen. Now we have Zachary Tannenbaum. And Zachary Tannenbaum is last year's Marshall champion. In a very dramatic way, he won it in the final round. Whereas the defending champion, Grandmaster Kamrakulov, lost dramatically to 2200 David Grasso in the final round, letting Tannenbaum win. And a great win for a 2250, 2300 player. I don't think it was 2350, to win over a grandmaster last year. So he's the defending champion. Right now, Zachary Tannenbaum has 3 points, so he's still in the running. He's playing Brewington Hardaway, one of our really strong up-and-coming young players who already is an international master, but it isn't in print yet. So let's see what happened here. Knight f3, the Reti opening. G3, we have c6, he chose to just solid. He sees the bishops coming to g2. He builds up a solid pawn wall. Bishop g2, here, d4. And there are many ways to play this with white, depending what you want to do with the move order. So he says he's probably willing to play bishop takes knight and defend his white squares with pawns. c4, willing to give that up. He'll win it right back or get a huge amount of pressure. Knight f6, he takes. Knight c3, bishop d6, h3, queen b3 attacking the b7 pawn. And so here we see it's a solid position. White has a little bit of pressure on the queen side. There's a lot to play for. This game is totally up in the air. And I wonder, we're hearing organ music here. I wonder if there's just, it must be a neighbor playing some music here. That's what I think. Thank you. All right. Could I have, please, no talking in the room unless you raise your hand? Thank you. Here we go. Is b3 into c4 anyways? Very possibly. Let's see what happens here. I'm not sure what they meant in the comment, what game they're talking about. Let's take a look at the next board. We have Leif Pressman, one of my colleagues from Westchester, where I'm living now. One of maybe the strongest player, active player in Westchester, besides Joshua Colas and Justin Sarkar. But Leif Pressman's a solid 2450 player. And let's take a look. Playing Brian Weiss, who's just at 2200, but he's been winning a lot lately. And Leif has been drawing a few games, so he really needs to win this because he's a half point behind Brian Weiss with only 2.5 points. So let's see what happens. So Rui Lopez, this is known as the Schliemann defense. It's not considered good, but White has to know his stuff. And I'm not sure what he chose. He chose this, take, queen e2, queen e7, castle. d5, exclamation point. Now look at this move. Take, and now black has a superior center in exchange for a weak isolated h-pawn. And let's see what happens here. d4. Leif doesn't want to mess around. He wants to challenge that center. So after e5, at least he stuck ground in the center, but now he's got to move his knight, and it's off to the side. So I don't know. Maybe Leif had forgotten his theory here, or maybe he knew his theory and this is a line, because I'm looking at it and I'm looking at that knight. Maybe it's going to come back to g2. I don't know. He could go queen h5 check too. He does queen h5 check, but the computer thinks it's a bad move, so it doesn't like it. Yeah, I was thinking g3, stopping f4, and the knight has a retreat on g2 to come back in the game. So this is what the computer likes best and gives White pretty big edge. No, decent position. I mean, not an edge. But. So he's working around the center. The center is fully restrained by White. But by playing queen h5 check, computer doesn't like it at all. I guess because the exclamation point. And now if he swaps queens, then the king is out of the pin on the c6 knight. And the king is closer to the center in an endgame. Well, that's what happened. I mean, I don't think there's a way to retreat the queen with advantage, because then black will get the initiative. If you try to retreat the queen, that pawn could come forward to f4, you see? So you can't, once you've done this, you're sort of committed. Let me show you an example. Queen e2. Could you close the door, please? Thank you. Thank you. Queen e2, and then look. Was I right? Bishop e7 attacking that knight, right? There's nowhere to retreat. So you can't fool around. Once you dive in with that check, you've got to be prepared for that endgame. So let's see what happens. It's certainly, black should be okay, but now he could still play g3 here, but he doesn't have to yet. So he chose bishop takes knight. So this is what you do. You give him bad pawn structure and a temporarily ugly bishop because it's blocked in by these pawns, but it could come out to a6, and you've given black a space advantage and the two bishops in exchange for a worse pawn structure. The computer likes black's chances with the two bishops. I'm a little concerned. It looks to me like I would prefer black. So let's see what happens. f3. This is common pawn break. Ready? King back, he chose, to get it out of the pin on the f file. g3. Okay. And now black to move. I like black's chances here. He can put a rook on b8, decide where to move his white squared bishop, play for a c4 break, pay for a c5 break, excuse me, play for bishop g7, and, okay, that's what's going on here. Not I mean, as I said. So let's go back to the master board and see how we are here now. Okay. As we said in this pure defense, little things have happened. Here's what he's doing. He's going, okay, I'm going to trade. And he also played pawn to f3. So look, he came here, f3. Bishop d7, with the idea of b5 and cracking open the side where the king is. Bishop h6 to trade off that bishop. And look, he took. He didn't want a castle there. Queen takes. And now queen c7. b5 must be coming, but still. Notice how this queen coming in here will stop castling. But look, just get out. Get out of my house. And the queen has to retreat, right? So I'm still not sure what's going on here. I'll say this. It's, definitely a game. Queen c7, h4. So there we go. Now he's playing his h-pawn, h3, h4. He's losing a little time by doing this whole attack. But, if black castles queenside, then one of his attacking pieces is gone from the queen side. So I see what white's idea is there. Okay, now he quickly does this. Who's going to strike first? And the ball's in white's court, right? So we're having a little Christmas party here. If anyone hears, I got Frosty the Snowman playing in the background, but at least they're not talking about chess variations, which would be really confusing, or singing about them. So let's go back again and see this master board. That's a really interesting game heating up between Johnson and Grant, too. Anyway, we're there. No, sorry, between Daniel Johnston and Mirkola Bortnik. Here we have the Grant Sue game, another modern defense. And again, we'll go back a little. So he goes a5, knight e3, knight b6, and he decided to castle queenside. Wow. Do you guys see what's going on here? He just sacrificed his a-pawn. Knight takes a4 he's sacrificing his a-pawn. Can anyone tell me what his idea is if black just takes that pawn for free? Hold on, before you raise, if you already see it? All right. What's your name?
David.
David, okay. What's your idea?
I think he's trying to go, I think he's going to go a4 and go for
No, after he takes on a4, what's your idea for white?
I think he's going to have a pawn. I think he's going to try to go for a pawn.
With what move? b3, but then the knight would come to c3. I'm gonna guess because the engine will say, but I don't want to look at the engine. So I'm look at this thing. Will he play g4? This is really interesting. Yep, that's the idea. Oh my God, he's distracting this knight because the knight is ready to swing into c4, which the bishop protects, right? So if he takes on a4, the knight can't come to c4, so now he can do this move. Knight takes f5. This is deep. And now what we said, look at that rook on h8. g4. And look at this position. The knight has nowhere to go. And if he can't take on g4, because if h takes g4, h takes g4, rook takes h1, rook takes h1, there's nowhere for the knight to retreat. It's terrible. So, see that? And if the same, no, but what if he goes, you might ask, what if he goes back right away? It loses a piece, just bishop takes. So that's his idea. So black would have to recapture with the pawn. And look at this position. The pawn structure of black is in tatters on the king side. So Zeltsin wanted to do this at the cost of the a pawn on a4, to just leave that knight with literally no place to go. And maybe this knight could come to h4 or g5. Well, actually, then the queen could attack it, so you have to be a little careful of that. But basically, he's banking that the fact that black's kingside pieces are totally messed up, he'll never be able to castle because he'll lose that h6 knight. He'll have to play for an f6 break or something. And the computer really likes, computer likes e6, right? And then let's say, wait, sorry. What move was played? Knight b6 castles. And now, let's say he goes e6. Oh, well, they won't let me play it. But maybe bishop g5 is good there. You know what I like? We have a really creative player right here in Joseph Zeltsin. This is a guy to watch. I've been enjoying his games over the last month in other tournaments, one of which the two of us I played in. And I just like his style. He strikes me as somewhat humble but confident, which is a good combination. And let's go here. Let's see what's going on. Let's go back to this position. Look at this move. He just did it. He said, take my a pawn to take away the c4 square from that knight, which it could move to. And that was his idea, just to give up tempo. And he did that. Now, what I'm going to do with black is I'm going to, once I get a couple pawns, I'll maybe give up a piece and stick my knight on c3 to give up that piece and crack the position open for my pieces over there on the queen side. So don't worry, you're going to see some fighting from Grant Zhu once he's down position. So look, here we go. Here we go. Zeltsin did it, just the variation we saw. We're in this position. This is hard to believe that this actually happened at the board, so I'm going to make sure. Refresh. Refresh. No, it didn't happen. Okay, here we are. We're still in this position. And black did not grab the hot pawn. But let me tell you, I think, yeah. Let me tell you, I think most players would take that pawn, right? I mean, it's just too tempting. But what I'm telling you is the reason he played it is to cut out the move knight c4 with this bishop here. He wants to keep this bishop holding the g4 square, I think. And the knight is doing nothing over there, and that's what he said. By the way, I can see the knight sacrificing itself on b2 or c3 later in this game, because he doesn't want to spend the time retreating it. But let's see what's going on, because we're talking, I don't know what Zeltsin's doing. He's probably really, really working on his tactical eye. And it's just nice to see someone so creative in the attack as him. So anyway, this is making it fun to come in and do this job, games like this. So otherwise it's sheer drudgery, Just kidding. Just kidding. I love this. I can't complain, you know. I'm in a tournament. I'm talking to somebody outside quietly, right? And somebody goes, shh, they're talking, right? So now I'm here doing a job talking about chess. It's great, you know. It makes more sense, right? Okay, so let's go back here. On board one again, we look at this game, and sure enough, the game is right on the money. Look, he took. So, okay, he's saying white still can do. Suddenly, this position, the computer suddenly loves black's game. Wow. Yeah, you know, it's just tough. It's just tough. The king side, the queen side is coming faster, and black did not create a target on the king side by castling. So that's the flexibility of this modern. And I think black saw that Johnson was really good at these Sicilians, and he didn't want to go into some main line. So right now the pressure is on the super low-rated Johnston to remain in the top of this tournament. This is a make or break it here now, but he's done great so far. Whatever happens, his tournament has been a success. But Bortnick wants to show why he's been so consistent on the New York scene lately. Let's go ahead now and retreat to the master board, and now see what's going on. Good, I'm getting the hang of this system a little. Okay, look. So Raja did not want to repeat the position, and he played g6, leaving his knight hanging there on g4. Sort of saying, if you want my knight to leave, you're going to have to at least move a pawn and weaken yourself a little. And so here we have a dragon variation of some sort. So we've got into a dragon where white just chose to retreat his knight to b3 unprovoked. And black played a6. And there's no hint of a Yugoslav attack, but with bishop c4 and h4. But we could get to something like it, though. So this is going to be interesting. So far, white has chosen to leave book here. So here we go. We'll go back. And now go back. Go back to that. And now we'll go back to a new board. All right. And now we'll go to the... Everyone see all the boards up there? Great. Oh, that's bigger up there. I like that. Okay, let's go back to board 4 and see what's happened in this Catalan. Well, look, he pulled his bishop back to f1. Kind of, you know. I mean, I've done that, and I know he wants to win that c4 pawn. But you've just moved your bishop off that beautiful diagonal. You're going to put it there. I mean, I see c3 coming now. You know. But then again, it says f5 is the best move, the engine, which is just gaining space while white retreats, excuse me. Retreats. And so, you know, right now, we got a game. Black seems to be dictating a little bit right now, psychologically. Let's go back. And let's go to board 5. Again, we have Zachary Tannenbaum, the defending champion. And what he did was he stuck his knight on b6. Let's go back. Oh, wait, it must have been a queen trade. Let's go back. Sure enough, queen b6, a standard answer to the threat on the b7 pawn, right? You can gambit that pawn, but most players don't want to play with fire there. So you'll say, trade queens, go ahead. All right, now, he takes because after knight takes, the knight is a little misplaced. You want to control e5. Sure, he's got c4, but b3 can always be played to take that square away. So the knight is usually knotted at best on the b6 square. And, you know, white is just banking on a slightly superior position. He'd like to get the e4 break, maybe, maybe not. Maybe he's just going to develop his bishop and use the c file. However, I don't know. I have a feeling black might be willing to play a king e7 here, and you keep his king towards the center, or even king d7. in some lines. But then again, knight with e5 would come with check. So, it's really not clear, but the computer really has it close here. Computer likes g4 to go after the bishop pair, maybe. If anyone has a question, feel free to raise your hand. What do we have written here? Stream chat. 4 or 5 grandmasters in the field have withdrawn. Crush, Jurabek, Fidel, Penguin? I feel they're not handling losses well. It's part of the game. They're ruining people's experience. They should be fined unless they're sick. But it doesn't set a good example for future talents. They're not right. They need to know how to stay tough while struggling. It's about coming back. That's why it's hard to break 2,700 and get in the top in the world. Interesting. Somebody said that. And he's got an argument to make. We have a question, yeah?
Not saying you got a point.
He's got a point. Like, do you drop out of a tournament? It's like, are you only in it for the prize? You can do something better with your time? Well, some tournaments, if it's a closed tournament in a round robin, you can't quit. And I've had, that's what sort of toughened me up. When I lost 10 games out of 12 with 2 draws in an international round robin when I went to Budapest, I went back to the board 1 game a day, and believe me, suffering. And you could not quit. And you play. And I came back 6 months later after, and I won the tournament clear first. International Master round robin. You should have seen the looks on some of those guys' faces. But it was like, you just got to build your thicker skin. But then again, this is a Swiss system. We're in America. People even take a bye in the first round. You could say, if you take a bye, if a GM's playing, they let GMs play for free. Maybe they should be demanded to play all their games to play for free. I don't know. GMs don't get annoyed at me now. I'm not the only one that said this. I'm not saying it's going to happen. That's some tournaments have to continue. No entry fee GMs must complete tournament. Because young players do want to play you. And look at Sammy Reshevsky. He was playing into his 70s. Young Lions, in fact, Jay Bonin beat Sammy Reshevsky. He's very proud of that when Reshevsky was 72. So, I like this idea of people like Korchnoi, Reshevsky. They play on. They give young Lions a chance to play them. But then again, somebody might have been sick. But it's true, there is a pattern here. So that's just a point they're saying. But, it's a Swiss tournament. They can't win it anymore. Maybe they need to make the income. Maybe they need the extra income, and they're thinking about that. Because as we know, part of this prize is you're making a living. I mean, these people, there's a good prize in this tournament. So let's go back. I don't know what happened last night. I should have checked the results, because I looked this morning and I couldn't find it anywhere. So, because they had a new tournament. Okay, let's see what's going on here. These are pro players who make a living from the game, says Smoked Almond Age. They left because the opportunity cost of trying to win a prize at this point is not worth it. Hey, you heard it, right? So that's his point. Good. This is point and counterpoint. It's perfectly okay to debate these issues. An example for future talents, it's not right to leave. Okay. They both have a point, and it's, sad to see a withdrawal. I could see if they have no chance of a prize, sure. And I don't know what happens. So let's go on. Here we go. G4 is played. And we're going to see bishop G6 and knight E5. Now, I was wondering about a knight H4 here, making sure you win the bishop. But that is maybe a little too committal. He wanted to play knight E5 to say, if you don't want me to take your bishop, you're going to have to take my knight on E5 with the other bishop. So the bishop pair in a semi-open position is an advantage, but this position isn't open enough yet. Let's see what goes on here. Rook C8. Yep, I like this non-committal move, and Rook C8 is just taking over some of that file. He isn't sure where he's going to play King E7, whether he's going to castle. Right now, if knight takes G6, H takes G6, and the rook has a nice pressure down on the H file. on that h-pawn. So that's why white doesn't want to take yet. And I don't think white will take on g6 because it just gives black ready-made pressure down the h-file on a backwards pawn. So let's go to another board. And now, as I said, Zeltsin's game is really interesting because of this pawn sacrifice on e4. And black decided to not move yet. But look at this move. Yeah, knight takes a4 gives white an advantage, a big one. And this is beautiful. I mean, this is a creative idea. So as I was saying, this is right now worth the price of admission right here. This move castles queenside by white. Whereas I thought on board one, I thought it was a little more reckless. And let's go back. Here we are back on board one. And now, when I told you about castling queenside there is more reckless, look what's happening right now. We got already on a 2.5 point advantage according to the computer for black. You see a move like a3 coming. You see a move like, the only thing is he can't use his rook on h8, but white can't use two of the pieces on h1 and g1. So it's always a matter of chaos here. So the last move, a4, yes, I mean, you know, right now, I guess rook went to d2 to give the king a chance to walk himself over to the other side of the board. And this is a standard idea of very strong players to do that. So the question is, a3 is an idea here to break in, and I have a feeling that may be coming next, but yeah, a3, sorry, it also undermines the knight on c3, which the queen is attacking. So a3 is a ready-made move right here. One of the computer's moves right now recommended is knight b1. You know, this is kind of sad when you're playing a move like knight b1 after castling queenside. And now, you know, it's funny how you come in, you go, oh, he's such a bad player. No, anybody can be made to look bad in a bad game and against a really good player. But this, you know, so we see now Mikola Bortnik is in his modern element right now. So this game is going to be tough for white. Again, we're back, and here black is thinking, and I think he's down 18 minutes. It's not a big deal if things get clarified quickly. I mean, he's not in time trouble. But he's thinking, okay, what can I do if I can't take that a-pawn? And he's thinking, what can I do? I can't really castle because g4 is going to ram open the position for the rook on h1. You know, I could play knight c4 on purpose to get rid of your bishop's, but no, that loses a pawn. Just knight takes or bishop takes. You can't play that. Man. Yeah. Now I'm beginning to think how deep that move castles queenside is, because the idea is really to connect the rooks. That's the idea, not to cover c4. So the idea is to connect the rooks, so after take on g4, or after g4, rook h8 takes the other rook and recapture. That's why. Okay, see, it takes me so long to catch up to him, but he's sitting there just looking at his position, okay? Bring these guys on, man, come on. Oh, okay, I got it. No, we got to be all wish we were in the place of these people down there. That's the great thing about chess. We imagine we were there and that we could do it too. So let's go back again to this master board. So here's my prediction. I'm predicting black will win on board one, and white has a huge edge here on board two. It's not as clarified. Board three, let's check out where we have our grandmaster trying to outplay our young, up-and-coming, maybe future grandmaster, Liam Putnam. And look, he finally kicked him. I said, dare you to play h3, he did, and he followed it up with g4. And we have a dragon now. And I don't know, looks like white's okay, for sure. I mean, a6 is not a fantastic tempo here, so even though white retreated to b3, I don't see anything so wrong. I think, you know, this is a game that's up in the air. But now I'm looking at the computer's assessment, which I'm so glad I don't look at first. because you get a lot more from thinking for yourself than you do looking at an engine first. Now I'm looking, okay, it likes black. Well, you've got two center pawns to one. The bishop on f1 is blocked in by pawns. And, you don't have a Yugoslav attack with h4, h5 here. So bishop g7 is going to be played. The computer's already looking at h5, inviting the pawn to g5. Bishop g7 to me looks like the most normal. You develop your piece on the long diagonal. Black isn't worried. Sorry. Let's keep going now. What do we have here? Let's see what we got. Are you an online player or a fan, or do you play over-the-board chess serious? I think he may be talking to someone in the thing. You are for sure 1100, even if you don't know it. Oh, sorry for read these. They're having a little argument about each other's strength, which happens when people get a little annoyed with the other person. A little bit of put-downs in. Try to take it out over the chessboard, gentlemen. Maybe come back after perhaps a duel, or a chess duel, not a Aaron Burr, Alexander Hamilton duel. Okay, let's take a look here on, it's funny, here we go now. He stuck his knight on e5, saying, dare you to take it. And now after the move rook c8, he played bishop to f4, right? Yes. Okay, good. And now here we go. Let's try and assess this. You look at the pieces you have in play. I'm seeing the king going to e7 for black. I'm seeing that connecting your two rooks, really flexible. And sort of white may be regretting having just castled in this position because his king is farther from the center. And do you call this an endgame? I almost call this a queenless middle game. There's still a lot of firepower. But it's hard to say what you call it. It's like, I shouldn't say like, I hate those routine like, words because they're so vague. You do not know, and I shouldn't say like. So I'm going to go back to being more committal to my speech here. Probably a rook should come to c1 here. He could play the pawn b3, but the problem with b3 is that the bishop can always go to a3 there. However, white's knight could always come to b5, hitting that bishop on d6. However, it could retreat to b8, and then you just play a6 and kick that knight out. So I'm not sure what's going on, but there's a lot of possibilities here. And I'm not sure who's better. Part of me would want to move this bishop on f4 out of the way so I could push my f pawn to f4 and threaten to play f5, quashing that bishop on g6. You see? But by the time I do that, maybe the bishop could escape to e4. But that is an idea here, to get this out of the way and ram that f-pawn forward, forcing a move like h here, allowing me to take on g6 without allowing the h-file to be open. This is a common idea. As soon as black plays a move like this, then we take on g6. And I'm just saying he won't play that. I'm just saying sometimes you can induce your opponent to play that. So there are a lot of possibilities here. These are where masters like to have an extra hour on the clock, like a full game, one game a day like in Europe, where you can really enjoy looking at your position, and really enjoy creating. And that's why I like classical longer time control chess. Because when you're forced to move in game 30 or game whatever, you basically have a gun to your head saying you're going to move. You're going to mess up. The games are more superficial. Everyone says, oh, it's a sport. It's a sport. Look at how fast his hands went. I'm like, this is not a physical sport. Chess is about the brain. The best moves in chess all took place in here. They sat there for 20 minutes and found an amazing move. Believe me, all this hand motion stuff is not what chess is about in the end. It's a variant of chess called blitz or speed. Chess is about the best you can give against the best your opponent has. And to me, that's sitting across the board for a whole, in a day, one game a day. Now, I know, it's great. We can do 2 games a day at this. There's a happy medium. Now, postal chess, that's another variant. That's too much perfection. That's where you're like, you have a book, you have a computer, and it's not really you playing half of those games now. Now it's great, you're going for the truth of a position. So to me, rapid and postal, they're variants of chess that are perfectly viable and fun. But real chess, you want the best your opponent has in one sitting, a nice long sitting. And so this is the type of position I'd like to have one game a day, and I'd really like to think about so many interesting ideas. So here we go. Now, some of these players might disagree with me. This is just me. This is my opinion. So let's go back. I know when I started playing Blitz, there was an opponent I beat every game. And then as soon as I played him in a long game, he took me down. And he was an expert. I was about the same rating, but and I realized I had a lot to learn about this game. Because you don't get away with as much in slow chess. So here we go, bishop there, h3. We're back in this position anyway. And right now, white is wondering, because here's where the profound ideas start. Here's where, we see what happens. So, by the way, does anyone remember who the famous grandmaster was who always wrote from the opening to the endgame right away? Who did that more than anyone? And he trained his students to do that. He wrote a book called How to Beat Bobby Fischer, because he had the best score against Fischer. Who? No, he never really got to play Fischer. Edmar Mednis. He was a great GM, and he loved going right into endgames. Some people thought him boring for that. Okay, right? But, you've got 9 extra queens there. I mean, chess is a sexist game. Look, you've got all these extra queens, and you only have 1 king. Tongue in cheek, okay. Let's go back here. So, so let's go back here. Let's see what we got now that I've been adding. Usually you add all these stories when there's nothing going on during the games, right? It's like you're doing commentary on a boxing match and you call it a chess match. What does that mean? It means no one's throwing any punches and they're like moving around, right? They're thinking. All right, so that's what I mean by chess is not a sport. I always have this argument. Chess is a great game. Chess, it almost isn't a game. Chess is chess. You can't really pin it down. It's competitive, but I call it a great board game and a pure skill game. And they go, well, chess is draining. You get really tired. Yeah, well, so is a shift at IT. So is a shift, as a garbage bin. I mean, it doesn't make it a sport, It's got elements of sport, it's got elements of art, but let's face it, the action is right in here. When Zukertort played the greatest move in chess history, or one of the greatest, Queen B4, he had been sitting there for a half hour, and he came up with this amazing move. People were walking out. They're going, what's he thinking? Oh, I'm getting bored waiting. That's what you get. I mean, and then they clapped when he played it, maybe, or after the game was over. So anyway, here we go. Let's take a look at a couple more of these things. I'm probably having some people arguing with me here. Remember his camp at the Manhattan long ago, says Mad Quick Chess. He's talking about Edmar Mednis, and someone told me they agree with me 100%. I'll get people mad at me here too. He was an interesting guy, loved his style, said, have a great experience. Funny names out here, huh? And now, have a great experience says, fruit punch, boxing, fruit punch. Okay. We are the best community, said, have a great experience. Cool. Remember this camp. Okay, great. I love this. So Edmar had a camp at the Manhattan. Cool. Okay, I never played a game to go right into the end game. Okay, look what we have here. So let's see what we got. He plays b5, a standard move. Bishop beat g2, the diagonal. Sure, he needs to protect on the diagonal. For instance, look, all of a sudden he's threatening pawn e5. Ouch. Opening up that bishop's laser-like diagonal. So bishop b7 is played. And now, look at this, a common idea. a4. The idea is, do you have a question? Or you're just stretching? Cool. Okay, a4. The idea is to crack open the position and lure the pawn forward to weaken the queen side. I'm not sure it's great here. A b4 is a good move, I think, because the bishop's not on f1 to exploit that diagonal right now. So I might play b4. Now I don't know what the idea is. He would probably go knight d5, right? I don't see anything better. And then the computer just gives bishop g7. Okay. I don't know. Let's see what his idea is. The game's still equal. Let's see what happened. b4 happened. Unless, wait, let's refresh. Because sometimes, check. b4 didn't happen. Let's go back. I think it's going to happen. Let's see what happened here. Here we are. Back on the cagey. We're seeing a lot of tricky move orders in this penultimate round. And so now b3 is played, not c3. Interesting. So now he's saying your queen can no longer come to c2. What are you going to do? I think he's going to have to take on e4 eventually to unclog his position before that pawn comes to f5. I would probably take on e4 and flip the other knight back. Oh, wait. I don't know. Black has retained his extra pawn. I don't know how much longer. It looks like he'll probably lose it back after a move like e3. But of course, Black hasn't developed any pieces yet. I mean, you know, it's a very strange game and definitely worthy of this tournament. All right, let's see. And let's see, somebody wrote, hey, Andrew Tate, chess boxing son of international master Emery Tate, who unfortunately lost 8 years ago. He was played Jay Bonin. You mean Andrew Tate's online here? Wow, because Emery, I was saying about seeing him in Budapest when I was defending our tough Budapest tournaments when Emery Tate came over there in a GM group, and he lost all 6 games and withdrew. It just says nothing bad about him. I mean, Emery Tate was a great attacker, but back then those Budapest GMs were just so solid, and it was just so hard to beat them, and his style didn't mesh well there. But he's beaten almost every GM in the U.S. So, you know, but still, I remember how I was saying those Budapest tournaments, how I got crushed every game in one. I came back and won one. But same with so many players. I mean, you know, who got their GM title there? Abhimanyu Mishra. And he comes here and he's 14 years old. He just came in second in the U.S. Championship. So these tournaments make you tougher. Anyway, what do you say? A great move. Grant made a great move. Thank you for telling me. Let's go look. Grant made a great move. Grant Zhu, let's see what he played. He played bishop back to e6. Well, the computer thinks white is ahead by 3 points here after simply now defending his pawn by b3. You see that? Now that Black couldn't do that. He wants to play his knight. He realized g4 was such a threat. You see? So white now has a huge advantage. He can simply defend his a pawn. You see? And why? Let's take a look. If b3, you see this backward pawn on c6? He'd love to engineer the move c5. It can't be played right now. Maybe he's going to play rook c8 eventually to play c5. But the trouble is he can't castle either. Because if he castles, this knight can move and there's an attack on that knight. So he's getting ready to move his knight to f5. So let's see what happens here. Go back. Yeah, there's so many moves that give white a good position. So right now, we are looking at a Zeltsin victory in a lot of ways. Could you close that, please? Thank you. We've got to have, yeah, this is broadcast. Okay, great. Thank you, sir. And let's see what we got. Yeah, there's more than one move. You know, white has a huge advantage. G4 is good. But B3 stops any activity right now, and it's very solid. However, the only thing it does is it creates a hook for a future C5, C4 after rook C8. But if ever C5 is played, after the pawn takes, this knight on F3 has the D4 square to sit on. And that would be beautiful for white. That would be absolutely so. So I'm just seeing this game. I'm not sure. The trouble with this Gurganidze is, what kind of play does black have? What plan? F6? He needs to be castled to play F6. So Furquan Tanweer taught Joseph Zeltsin how to move the pieces 11 years ago. Hey, Furquan is another one of my Westchesterites. If you're out there, Furquan, hello. Wow, solid masters. Furquan Tanweer, known as Khan, is a very creative attacking player. And so he taught Joseph how to play. Interesting. So Joseph's only 21 years old. Oh my. I think the sky's the limit for Joseph, because what I mean is you don't have to be a child prodigy he was, but you don't have to be really young. You can, 21, who knows how far he can go. I mean, right now he's going to be over 2,500. Let's see what happens with this tournament. But with the way this game is going, he's going to be playing on board 1 in the final round. And so let's see what goes on here. Look at this, we got a 3.5 point advantage here, according to the computer. Anyway, let's go back and let's go back to the master board and see what's going on. All right, let's go back to white. And now, sure enough, after knight d5, now here's what's going on. The b4 pawn is now targeted by the d5 knight, but it's protected by the c6 knight. It seems like maybe he's going to play bishop d2. I don't know. Oh, it's black's move again? Knight f6 was played. Okay, it's white's move. White played a5. Ah, sorry, thank you. White has played a5, gaining space and isolated the b4 pawn before black can play a5, her or himself. And Have a Great Experience says, Joseph could be top 10 in the world someday. Okay, well, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but why not? The sky's the limit. So could I. Just kidding. No, I'm a little bit, old for that. I would have to, I would have to lock myself in a closet with a computer and let everything lapse, and that probably wouldn't be a good thing to bet on, because I've got a family too. But you've heard stories about people who've done that for chess. By the way, let me recommend a book about some chess personalities, some who mistakenly gave up their whole life for this game. I mean, this game can devour you, but some also great personality. This book called The Bobby Fischer I Knew by Arnold Denker, a great grandmaster who did so many other things in his life and was a colorful, humorous personality in chess and a U.S. champion to boot, who lived to be about 95. Wrote a story of all these players throughout the 40s, 50s, who had these colorful personalities, very strong players that you don't hear about, and their lives, some tragic, some interesting. So it's called The Bobby Fischer I Knew, and I just enjoy reading it. So anyway, let's go. Here we go. Sure enough, Raj likes his position, and he's looking at this bishop sort of clogged in by its pawns. He's looking at our harmonious pawns, his center. The only thing white has going for him is an isolated b pawn for black and a more center control right now. Let's go back. Zeltsin finally moved, and he chose knight g5, a move I hadn't even considered. But it still gives him an edge, maybe a little less than the move g4 or b3. But he was trying to make action happen. He says, I'm going to take your bishop on e6, maybe. Maybe I'm going to play, maybe I'm going to play for g4. I'm going to mangle your pawns unless you play, you move your bishop somewhere else, right? And let me get a sip of something. I could take a coffee break, but I'm so excited here, I'm just going to sit here, so let me take a sip. All right, excellent. So what do we have here? Yeah, remember, I see the rice cakes, that's fine, you can have that here, but I remember an opponent brought rice cakes. Normally in a FIDE tournament, you don't eat at the board. You shouldn't, because it's a distraction to your opponent. You should drink your tea or whatever, but you should eat outside the board, that's one thing. But as some rice cake, they were clack, and I went, oh, the rice cake's defense. He's using the rice, he's crunching his rice cakes while I'm trying to think. But you know, that's what's funny, you know, there are all these sort of funny words. I have a lot of funny stories and I'll share some with you. It's one of them. I didn't say it out loud, but I remember a friend said, oh, he used the rice cakes defense. Interesting. One guy was eating bee pollen because he thought it would give him some supernatural power or something. Now there's going to be implanted chips with computer technology. I don't know how long, but we better get going in our tournaments quick before they do that. I don't know. So keep playing now before, you know, I don't know what they'll do. So let's see what's here. They'll have a scan when you walk in, a chip scan. Let's go here. So what do we have? Knight g5. So he just basically says, I'm going to take your bishop. That sort of decentralizes the knight. I liked my knight on f3 in case c5 was ever played so I could stick that knight on the d4 square and I would just be winning. But then again, I'm not going to second guess Zeltsin here. All right, what's going on here? Oh yeah, some guy wrote the bee pollen gambit. Yeah, I know. Oh, I should add, it didn't work. It did, you know, I won in that game, but that was winning. That was when I won the championship of Provincetown, Cape Cod, and that made me a 2000 player. It was really exciting. I was 1999. I'm just saying, I got to win the game with Philidor's Legacy, Smothered Mate. Not that game, but the tournament. It was always sweet. It was a two knights defense. And when you get to play the Smothered Mate combination, you got. I mean, most of you know what that is. Okay, let's see what's going on here. So he played knight g5, and he goes knight takes a4. Wow. So you see, he gave the guy another chance to take that a-pawn. He didn't have to, but he goes, all right. And I think Grant Sue is willing to sacrifice that a4 knight later. Let's see what happens. Or maybe he's going to play c5 and bring it back into the game that way. Because that's the one thing. There's no more knight to come to d4. So I think Joseph's going to take on e6. But I don't know. Maybe he has something better in mind. He surprised us with castle's queenside, so who knows what this guy's going to come up with next. And I like that. It was like Mikhail Tal. You didn't know what he was going to come up with. All right. Let's go up here. And now we go back here. Sure enough, we'll go back a few moves. I told you a3 would be played, right? Okay, let's go. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, let's go back. Wow, a lot of action here. Mr. Bortnick will come here and we'll probably talk to him soon. Did you win your game?
Yeah.
Would you like to be interviewed online? Excellent. We have Mikola Bortnick, so I guess the game's already over. So, not guess, I know. Great. All right, now I wanted to tell you, congratulations to Mikola Bortnick for
so much.
winning a crucial game on round one. And I studied back in Budapest with Alexander Chernin, and I used to play the modern defense a lot, so I'm looking at this, remembering a lot of stuff. And I see you like to play that opening.
Not really. I didn't play it before. I just wasn't sure what to play against him today because he did very well in Sicilian defense, and also we used to play Alekin's defense in one tournament. So
Can you hear? Yeah. You also like to play Alekin's defense?
Yeah, I played Alekin against him before 1 month ago, and he played a good line, so I decided to choose something new. And G6 was one of them, one of these variations.
That's exactly what I was saying to the people. I said, we've seen Johnson win these Sicilians and know his Sicilians so well that I thought you had to try and be a little trickier with your move orders, which I remember you did to me in a game, and you really tricked me well with these different move orders. And I didn't realize what was happening, and I transposed to something I didn't want to. So see what's going on to here. So let's see what happened. And you chose the normal modern defense so far. Yeah. Should we get the camera on us both? That's good. Okay, you got it. Yeah, good. Okay. And you can hear him? This is good. Okay.
What's on there?
All right. So